Hi everyone, I'm Tihani. I'll be presenting chapter 9, which is all about leading groups. My goal today is for each of you to learn something that will help you become successful in your future. So by the end of my presentation, you should have a better understanding of the following things, which are what leadership is, trait characteristics of effective leaders, the difference between functional and situational perspective, transformational leadership, and how leaders emerge in small groups. Little additional information, keep an eye on key terms that are going to be in red. So before I dive into the textbook definition of what leadership is, I'd first like you all just to think about what leadership means to you. So from your own perspective, how do you define leadership? What do leaders look like? Well, perhaps for some of you, a leader is a political figure, someone charismatic or who holds a lot of authority or power. For others, a leader could be someone who is popular among society, someone with trustworthy credibility. Or it could be someone who's a role model, who people look up to. Or perhaps it's an all-American hero, someone who's heroic and brave, who you'd follow into battle. Or maybe it's as simply as someone who's a genius, who's creative and innovative. Ultimately, they all could fit under the category of leadership because they all exemplify behavior or communication that influences, guides, directs, or controls a group. So now that I've defined leadership, let's talk about trait perspective. Traditionally, researchers felt that by looking at successful leaders, they could identify the attributes or individual traits that best predict good leadership ability. This became known as trait perspective. So another way of saying it is a view of leadership as the personal attributes or qualities that leaders possess. So some of these attributes or qualities could be in the following list that I've provided. I'll read off a few. Intelligence, dominance, creativity, enthusiasm, more physically attractive, energetic, and has a lot of self-control. At first, the theory of trait perspective seemed useful, but over time it was seen as less accurate. Traits useful in one situation are not necessarily the traits required for other leadership positions. An example of this would be a person who leads others into battle versus a person who leads others into an operating room. Both could have the same type of traits, but it doesn't mean that it's necessary for that type of position. So the main problem is that trait perspective does not identify which traits are important to becoming a leader and which are important to actually maintaining the position. So moving on to functional perspective, which is all about group needs and roles. This examines leadership as behaviors that may be performed by any group member to maximize group effectiveness. The key about this is any group member. This approach describes the specific communicative behaviors that help a group function more effectively. Understanding these specific behaviors leads to more group productivity. So there are two categories under functional perspective. The first is task leadership, which is any behavior that influences group process and helps accomplish the group's task and can be performed by, again, any group member. Task leaders are responsible for keeping their group on track. They're also responsible for making suggestions, offering new ideas, planning activities, and making decisions. So there are 4 types of communicative behaviors that are underneath task leadership. The first is initiating. So someone who starts discussions, provides direction, and basically gets ideas flowing. 2 is coordinating. So someone who explores all the contributors of all the members. So things that make members special, strengths of members, or even perhaps cultural background that could be influential or useful in the group or the group task. 3 is summarizing, which reduces group uncertainty by showing how far the discussion has progressed and also what it still needs to accomplish. 4 is elaborating. So this basically is just focusing on visualizing ideas. So moving on to the second category of functional perspective, which is process leadership. This focuses on the specific needs of the group members. So this is all about the people, all about the actual members. So this maintains interpersonal relations in a group and helps to facilitate a climate satisfying to members. 4 types of communicative behaviors under process leadership is first, releasing tension. So a process leader would perhaps maybe give a group a break in order to renew the group's energy. 2 is gatekeeping. So coordinating discussions so that members can be heard. Not all members are great at vocalizing their opinions. So by coordinating a discussion, this allows those specific types of members who are perhaps shy a chance for their voice to be heard. 3 is encouraging, so increasing confidence and self-esteem. This can be easily done as simply offering praise to someone who's done great work. And 4 is mediating, so resolving conflict. In other words, keeping the peace. So now we're going to move on to situational perspective. Situational perspective accounts for all of these factors, which are leadership, behaviors, task needs, process needs, but also focuses on leadership style and situation. Leadership style is a consistent pattern of behavior reflecting a leader's beliefs and attitudes. So people lead with basically 3 social climate styles. I mean, most people, or some people lead with their own unique style, but this is basically the primary 3. The first is authoritarian, the second is democratic, and the third is laissez-faire. So depending on the situation, each of these could be essential. For instance, if a group is under high stress, high uncertainty, and has no structured goals, then perhaps a leader who is authoritative would be the best fit for that group. However, once those goals are structured, once the uncertainty is decreased and the stress levels are low, the group may change their perspective and they may want to go towards someone who is more of a democratic leader. And this is because the situation has changed. Democratic leaders also tend to lead to greater group satisfaction and higher productivity. So some examples I have here are authoritative leaders, so managers who give orders and directions. Democratic leaders are more concerned about what their members have to say, so they like to hear the input about their members before making the decision. And then the laissez-faire leaders like to just avoid groups kind of in general. They like to just assume that the group kind of knows what they're doing, that they're just going to direct themselves. All right, so we're going to move on to transformational leadership. The defining characteristics are simple. Just remember 4 I's. Idealized leadership, which focuses on vision. Inspirational motivation, which focuses on action. Intellectual stimulation, which is all about challenging the status quo. And individual consideration, which is support. So basically, strive to change, elevate, and unify the goals of followers, as well as inspire them to pursue challenging and shared objectives. To sum it up, transformational leadership is all about building shared vision, surfacing and challenging mental models, and engaging in systems thinking. All right, so our last concept is emergent leadership. which is method of residues. Another way to think about this is process of elimination. So this is where group members are rejected for the role of leadership until only one person remains. So in order for a leader to emerge, there is a certain phase of the eliminations. The first phase is where the quiet ones, so people who don't actively participate in group discussions, they kind of get put off immediately to the side and rejected. The second are going to be over-aggressively talkative ones who are perceived as inflexible. So group members may see them as someone who might basically think of their opinions as higher or above or better than the rest of the group members. So they're probably not going to want that leader. And so eventually, once you kind of get rid of those two phases and once you eliminate those types of people, you're kind of left with a smaller group. And by then, it's a lot easier for the group to come up with a consensus, which is when all group members support and are committed to a decision. So they all pick one leader. All right, so now it's time for a review. So leadership basically defines the most effective leadership behavior as one that best meets the needs of the group. Trait approach attempts to identify characteristics common to successful leaders. Functional approach views leadership as a set of behaviors that may be enacted by any group member. And situational approach, which relates to effective leadership to interaction between leadership style and the group situation. Transformational leadership motivates others to move beyond their self-interest and work for the greater collective good. And then lastly, emergent leadership. So it provides the optimum blend of task efficiency and personal consideration. All right, so thank you so much for watching my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it.